Welcome back to Life Without Secrets. Today we have Jenn Johnson on the show with us. Jenn is an experienced RN and author of her upcoming book, Nursing Intuition: How to Trust Your Gut, Save Your Sanity, and Survive Your Career. She is joining us today to dive deep into the power of intuition. After over a decade and a half in nursing, I know firsthand that Jenn has seen a lot, and her experiences have taught her that intuition isn't just a helpful tool. It's essential for surviving and thriving in demanding environments. In this episode, we'll explore how to tap into your own intuition to manage stress, prevent burnout, and make better decisions, even if you're not in the medical field. Jenn's wisdom reaches beyond nursing. It's about finding clarity, protecting your mental well being, and staying connected to your instincts no matter where life takes you. So, whether you're looking to rediscover your passion, reduce overwhelm, or simply make more aligned choices, this conversation is going to give you practical insights and strategies to guide you on your journey. So, let's get ready and dive in. Jenn, welcome to Life Without
Oh
Secrets.
my God, Jillian, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to dive into this conversation. Me and Jenn have actually probably been talking for like 30 minutes already, and I probably should have hit record 30 minutes ago, but like she's a nurse, I'm a nurse, we both work ER bedside. Like we just have so much to chat about. And so this is going to be a in-depth conversation, I'm sure. Like we're just going to dive into it and we might even take some little spins in here because, as ER nurses, sometimes our attention spans just goes another direction. But I know this is going to be so helpful and also probably really interesting. So this is going to be so fun. Thank you, Jenn, for coming on here.
Anytime. I know the side conversations were like we're gone. We're like squirrel and we're out and it's a done deal.
So good. Well, I know as someone who is also works in the ER, I know firsthand like what nursing, the toll it can take on us, right? And I really want to know, like, so you have this book that's coming out this coming November, and I want to know like what initially inspired you to write Nursing Intuition or write about it, and how did your experiences in the nursing field shape your decision to actually focus on intuition in particular?
Yeah. So the book actually just started out as a trauma journal. So working the
Mm.
ER during COVID, we actually had attorneys come forward to say, like, hey, we'll do everybody's wills for free. I'm like, pardon?
Mhm.
So the feeling that you get is you're not expected to survive. So working straight night shift, we didn't have daycare. My kids were 4 and 5 at the time. I would stay up all day with the kids, go into nights, stay up all night unless we're lucky enough to
Mm.
get like an hour and a half to 2 hour break. Go home, stay up all day, maybe get an hour break before going back into work, and just 4 days of that and then 5 off. And doing that for months completely broke me into a million pieces.
Wow.
Had no idea the importance of sleep on burnout and resilience. Like, that
Mhm.
was a whole other thing. Um, but just working the ER and not knowing if you're going to get sick, are you going to bring it home? Are your kids going to get sick? Am I going to affect another patient? Am I going to survive? All these questions that were, floating around your head on the daily. So got to a point where finally said, like, if I don't survive this, how do you explain to a 4 and 5 year old growing up that mom chose to continue to go to work when these were the risks? And so started to sit down and write out the really, really good stories about how I helped patients and or advocated or did
Mm.
whatever. And of course, very soon after, the really tough stories came up. The patient deaths that stuck with me, the instances of bullying that I'd kind of just shoved down and not dealt with, all the stories. And so everything spewed out of me in about 6 weeks. And I don't
Wow.
recall writing the book. I just remember getting up really, really early and staying up really, really late and writing whenever I had a minute at work. And, you know, after everything was said and done, I took a step back and reread everything. And I'm like, there's more to this. Like, what am I missing? And Llewellyn, who's a publisher out of the US that does a lot of metaphysical stuff, they were having online book fairs. And the one author was talking about intuition at work, which was her book. And I'm like, intuition at work. I use my intuition all the time at work. And it was just that click.
Mhm.
And I'm going, oh my God, that's it. So went back through all the stories. Sure enough, there was some portion of intuition that I was using. And then, did I say anything? Did I not say anything? if I did say something, did somebody believe me? Did we do things? Was there a better outcome? And looking at all these stories going like, "Oh my god," and watching myself kind of grow through, and I'm like, "Wow, this is like really interesting." But having it be 2020 and kind of, a woo-woo topic, unless there was science behind it, there was no way I was bringing it forward. So did a deep dive on intuition, both like the psychology aspects and the physiology aspects and, all
Mhm.
the different components to say like, okay, where is this coming from? Is it real? Is it supported? Is it something that we're doing? And not only was there so much information on the, on intuition itself, but specifically intuition in nursing. And
Mhm.
not just nursing, but like critical care nursing especially really seemed to
Yeah.
thrive and use their intuition more. And it was pretty much just based on the fact that there wasn't a second to doubt yourself. You really just went with it and then saw the positive outcomes. So then you started to trust it more and you kept kind of going down that road. So I'm like, okay, there's all this science, there's my stories. And then the more I would talk about it at work, the more we go, well, yeah, I do that all the time. Well, this is what I call it. I call it gut feeling. I call it intuition. I call it just a feeling. And how all the different portions of us would, well, how do you relay that to your physicians? How do you relay that to your other nurses about what's going on and what's working, what's not working? And just the overwhelming sense of we're all doing this, but nobody talks about it
Mhm.
unless it's like 3 a.m. and we're doing the ghost stories versus intuition conversation.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so I'm like, okay, so this is it. This is out there. There is science. Let's, you know what? If anybody's going to put myself out there and be super weird, it's going to be me. So put myself way out there. And with the book coming out in like less than a month, I'm like sweating because it's my trauma
So
journal.
cool.
It's my
Yeah.
beliefs on how we are trusting our gut and how it applies to medicine, but then how it applies to real life because every woman over the age of 12 knows exactly what that feeling is when you're walking into a
Mhm.
party or you're walking across
Walking
the
through a
street,
parking lot.
walking to a parking lot and you just go like, "Nope."
Yep.
And you're triple
Mhm.
checking your surroundings, you're
Yep.
seeing somebody or you're being introduced to somebody and everyone's like, "Oh my god, this like guy's so great." And you're like, "Ugh, nope."
No.
Hard
Mhm.
no. And so you're like, "Oh, very pleasant in front of them," but in your mind you're going, "This is an absolute no for me. There's something about it. Don't know what it is." But that just being able to say that is totally acceptable. So bridging that into nursing and medicine and letting us figure out that there's more to what's going on is very obviously my calling and my passion, and being able to put it out there is I'm really, really excited about it.
I'm so excited about it too, and I cannot wait to read it. Is there any examples that you can give us, like in particular in your career, where trusting your intuition has made a critical difference in patient care or your own well-being in that environment? And then I want to like try to relate that to not just nursing, but like other environments.
Yeah, so one of the first times where I kind of knew that something was wrong, but wasn't sure how to kind of bring it forward, had a patient who was diagnosed with pancreatitis and was a brand new nurse. I don't even think I was a year out, but in a very, very small hospital, rural northern Ontario, no access to CT, very little ultrasound.
Wow.
Didn't even do
Hmm.
some like lactates. We didn't even do lactates in the hospital. And so, going and seeing my patient and doing the vitals and everything seems fine. Well, he doubles over in front of me and says like, "Oh my god, my abdomen or my stomach," and it like doubles over. And then all of a sudden he's like super diaphoretic and sweaty and not really, his color's kind of changing a bit. I'm like, "What is going on?" So I'm repeating the
Uh-oh.
vitals. The vitals are going in the wrong direction, so heart rate's coming up. He's starting to spike a fever, blood pressure starting to come down, and which are all like really not great signs, especially combined together. So I was trying to call the doc. It's not even 8 a.m. I'm trying to call the doc, being like, "Hey, hey, hey, like I need you to come here." And they just kept putting me off. They're just like, "Oh, their lipase, so their blood work has been worse before. They've been in this for multiple times. It's not a big deal, whatever," and just brushed me off. And so, I did have a few other patients that I kind of like focused on this one because he was the sickest and everybody else had been there for months already. It was kind of a rehab facility intermingling with long-term care. And checking on this guy and repeating the vitals. And every time I went back to repeat the vitals, they got worse and worse and worse, calling the doc back, and continued to get put off. And it wasn't until they finally came in at like 11 o'clock, 11:30. And I'm like, oh, thank God you're here. Like, oh my God, like grabbed her and pulled her into the room because I was like, I don't know what to
Mhm.
do with this. And so she sees him. She's like, oh, we'll just do like a little bolus. We'll just give a little fluid. We'll just give some medications for pain. We'll just give some medications for fever. And I'm like, great. So sure, those worked a little bit, but the medications for pain brought down the blood pressure. So it continued to fall and fall and fall. And he looked worse and worse and worse as the day went on. And it wasn't, I think it was like 12:30 by the time we're moving him up into our cardiac room because we've only got one cardiac monitor in the hospital. So
Oh my
moving
gosh.
him moving him up there and starting medications to then bring up his blood pressure, which is, which means he's really quite sick. And within the hour of moving him up to that room, now we're doing chest compressions because his heart stopped. And we worked him for a while, 45 minutes maybe. And, by 2 o'clock, he was dead. And they called it and they walked away. And I'm left going, what did I miss? Like, what could I have advocated more? Could I have pushed harder? Was there something that maybe night shift could have caught that I didn't? Like, I don't know. And for years, it haunted me, like, just
Mm.
feeling so responsible for this death personally. And it wasn't until I finally was able to leave that hospital 5 years later that I was kind of telling everybody I was super excited because the bullying there was ridiculous. And the doctor who was the doc that day, she comes up to me and she goes, don't let anybody tell you you don't know what you're doing, and walked away. And I'm like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what situation. And you've waited 5 years to tell me this? Had I stayed, would you have ever told me this? So I was so upset. I was just like, you know what? This is complete BS. You should have told me that there was nothing more we could have done. You should have said, you should have come clean with like, hey, maybe I didn't come soon enough. Maybe we could have done more. Like, just taken some responsibility. Instead, I bared that responsibility for 5 years personally.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, just that whole situation and finally realizing that no, I was right in my assessments. I was right in my, bugging her to come in. And yet, would it have changed anything looking back? I don't know if it had. We think he might have like perfed his bowel and and
Oh yeah, I'm
and
sure.
spilled bowel
Yeah.
contents into his abdomen. So would it have made a
He was
difference? I
septic.
don't know. Septic, 100%.
Yeah.
But
Mhm. Yeah.
it was just so fast and so hard that it was just, oh my gosh, this thing never rings. Stop it. The
It's
Scottish.
the ER
It's
calling.
the
They
ear.
want you to come
You
in.
want to come to work? Come to work. We're short. We're always short. Yep.
So,
I can't.
and maybe people cannot relate to being in that situation where
Mhm.
like not only were you in a difficult situation where like your everything inside of you was telling you there's something wrong, like you need to do something about this, and you didn't get heard,
Yeah.
in those moments where you needed to, but not only that, but you carried that for a long time, right? And
Yeah.
like, but and I think that others can relate to this too, right? Like where like if you're a mom, for instance, and something's wrong with your
I
kid, or like even something small, like they go to get on their bike that day and you didn't remind them to put on their helmet and they get in a bike accident. Like there's so many different situations. Or maybe like, you really desperately needed somebody for your business and you knew that that person wasn't really right, but you hired them anyway and it ended up being something terrible, right?
yeah.
Like there's so many different situations that maybe not are not, life threatening necessarily, but like make a huge impact, or like high pressure situations that we find ourselves in where like we are getting these nudges, we are getting these calls from our intuition. Why do you think that oftentimes they're frequently overlooked?
Yeah. Well, because it's one of those things, right? Depending on how comfortable you are with even the idea of intuition is whether or not
Mhm.
you let it happen, and not just let it happen, but
Mhm.
listen to it and then actually do something about it. So,
Mhm.
the feeling of, oh, I really like this person. Like, how can I help out this
Mhm.
person? Maybe I do need to hire somebody and they really aren't fitting the qualifications perfectly, but for some reason, like I really like them and we're really clicking and I want to give them a shot. Like that's another way to like that's kind of the positive spin about like if
Yeah,
you're trusting your
absolutely.
gut, you're going with it.
Mhm.
The empirical data of that person not being, having the right qualifications per se, well, people can learn. Like
Yep.
sometimes some of the best success stories are coming out of when people gave other people a shot and
Yep.
they didn't know why they gave him the shot. They just, I really think that this could work well. Why not? Right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So, how does ignoring our intuition kind of contribute to people's burnout?
Yeah.
And how can we avoid that?
It's one of those things where it's, you're having these nudges and you're saying like, "Oh, maybe the babysitter that you're interviewing, oh, it's not doesn't really feel
Mm.
great, but they're a kid
Mhm.
and it's probably their first job and how do you know?" But, or then something happens, either there's some little mini medical thing that happens with your kid and your babysitter didn't quite know how to deal with it, or, the house is a mess afterwards because they kind of went free for all. You doubt yourself and then you're like, "Oh, like I really should have." You're putting the blame back onto yourself, right? Like you're thinking,
Mhm.
"I should have known better. I should have, maybe if I just would have extended myself a little bit more, especially as mothers, extending and overextending and overextending.
Mhm.
You can't do it all by yourself. That's why the whole thing about having a tribe is so important because there will
Mhm.
be times when you're pulled in two different directions, right? Do you go out and try to get your business going, or do you stay at home because you really can't find anybody else to watch your kids? That
Yeah.
push and pull of being constantly, asking yourself, what's the right thing to do? Sometimes there's never a good answer. It's just you have to make a decision and go with it. And there will always be consequences, whether they're good or bad or otherwise. So you go to the business trip, you sell 6,000 books, but in the meantime, you miss out on, hanging out with your kids and the one got into a recital. And so she's been trying to learn how to sing her little part and you've missed that. Yeah, it sucks, I can tell you. But at the
Mhm.
same
Mhm.
time, me being fulfilled and happy, like I have a right to be happy too. Why isn't that ever
Mhm.
a consideration? So going
Uh-huh.
back and forth between the push and pull, like you could be a stay-at-home mom, do everything quote unquote 100% perfectly, and still there's going to be a bad outcome or something that happens that you didn't anticipate. You're going to blame yourself even though you've tried to do everything right. The fun fact is there's never a right answer. There's only just what you're going to do. So being able to get comfortable with when your gut kind of says, no, 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 like you got to follow this through, being comfortable with that
Yeah.
and saying, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to try. And if I fail, whatever it is, what it is. But 9 times out of 10, you putting yourself out there is going to get you into the right spot. It's just being
Mm.
comfortable with the cost of it. Is it an emotional cost? Is it a physical cost? Is it an actual like cost? You know, trying to come to terms with there's always going to be, a loss or a negative to a situation. It's just trying to mitigate how theoretically bad that loss is. Will my daughter be scarred for forever because I wasn't here to practice her little songs with her? I don't know. I'm already saving up for therapy for her later because being an ER nurse, like I can't even
The
imagine
world is hard.
I can't even imagine. Like, they get so worked up because I'm straight night shift, and so they get, "Mommy, are you going to work today? Are you going to work? Are you going to work?" Like, "Yes, I do you like to eat? Do you like to have a roof over your
Mhm.
head?
Mhm.
Mommy has to go work. I don't see you clinging on to your dad like this, though. Like, he's home. Like, you can go cling on to dad. Go give dad a little dad guilt because
Yeah.
the mom guilt is excessive at this
Right?
point."
I know, and I always say, like, I think it's also a great example, like, I love being able to do both, like, I love being able to show up for my kids, but also, like, have my own thing that I like to do,
Yeah,
and so, it's like phrasing it, it's like, "No, I get to go to work tomorrow," and it's like, it's not because I don't like to be here, it's because I also like to be over here
yeah,
and doing something that I like to do or something that, like, makes me feel fulfilled,
yeah,
that I was given gifts for, and you're going to be given gifts for other things in life. And I hope you go do that thing. And so, I mean, I love both sides. I think that they're both super important. And I want to ask you, like, is there any specific habits or routines that help you like tap into your intuition, that maybe, someone that's like, I don't really know, like sometimes I kind of get this little nudge, but like I don't know really where it's coming from or if I even trust myself.
Yeah.
Like, is that really the truth? Like, where is this coming from? How do you distinguish?
Yeah, it's hard because if you've got time to talk yourself out of it, it is so much easier to talk yourself out of it than actually lean into it. So if you're
Hmm.
out and about, you get a nudge, you're like, okay, well, first things first, A, I'm just recognizing that it's happened, which is half the work,
Hmm.
is just to realize, yes, it's happened. And yes, I'm feeling it. And yes, I'm believing that it's real. The next is, okay, am I in immediate danger? Is something trying to grab my attention that, I'm supposed to go left instead of right? Or is it just a thought that's popped into my head? Being able to try and figure out where you're feeling it is another great exercise. Are you feeling it in your stomach? Is it like a heaviness that just like, ugh, kind of gross feeling that just
Hmm.
like is so heavy that you're just like, oh, this feels gross? Or is it your heart? All of a sudden, your heart starts racing when something's happening. Is it goosebumps that happen when someone mentions a topic and all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I'm getting goosebumps? I like to call them truth bumps. It's a way that your system is telling you,
Hmm.
no, 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 like this is 100% for sure happening. And goosebumps are a great way to really get your attention. Or is it just a thought that pops into your head? Is it, you're thinking about, oh, I want to go to these two different conferences and you're trying to wean out pros and cons and thinking about like what would be best for my business. And then it's like, you'll see something on TV that reminds you of the one conference, or you're listening to a podcast and that topic comes up again. It's like these little nudges that if you're
Yes.
willing to be open to them and kind of just give them a little bit of attention, could really take you far. So the last one that happened to me that wasn't work, I'd gone to this conference in Las Vegas, health, and we were packing up everything, getting ready to go. And they had put out fresh flowers for everybody. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to take some fresh flowers. I grabbed a rose because for me, I love roses. I can't get enough of them. I started packing it away. I did not realize until I put my very first journal on top of it that it was the exact same color of rose that's on the cover of, like, the whole cover is a rose and it's the exact same
Oh, wow.
color as the rose that I just packed. And I'm like, all right, I get it. I hear you. I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm right place, right time, exactly where I'm supposed to be. So, okay, haha, I laugh a little bit doing these kinds of things because it's just like, had you not kind of been open to that situation, you wouldn't have put two and two together. And it might,
Hmm.
you might have just gone and it
Hmm.
had gone unnoticed and it's not a really big deal. But for me, it's a confirmation that that was exactly where I was supposed to be. And not just because I also got to sell 6,000 of my books before it's even released, but because, like, that's just showing me that I'm on the right track, I'm on the right path, I'm supposed to be helping new nurses grow and providing very what seem to be very out there ideas, a physical journal for new nurses to write when this whole, conference was about AI and digitization and
Hmm.
tech and healthcare, and here I am, out of nowhere with just physical journals. Like, "Hey, these could be a great nursing week gift for your people, like, bring them on in." And sure enough,
Yeah.
like, that's what happened. So it's one of those things where once you get comfortable with being weird and quirky and maybe just kind of looking at things a little bit outside the box and realizing that there's a little bit more magic that goes on in daily life than we like to realize, man, a lot of things start happening. And it's just getting over that hump of being very, very logical and being so, everything that I can touch and feel, that's all that exists kind of thing. It's getting over that hump that once you get over there, you're like,
Hmm.
oh, like it's a really beautiful day and like let me look at the sunset. And it's just you start appreciating nature a little bit more and what's going on around you. And you kind of start coming out of your head a little bit to really hone into the little teeny tiny details that really we wouldn't have noticed otherwise.
Yeah. And what I hear you saying is that we have to slow down a little bit.
Oh, so much so.
Right?
And
Because especially in the world that we live in, right? Or in the world that we work in, like the ER is very fast paced.
yes,
And there's other jobs that are also high pressure, fast paced jobs. You get home to your house, maybe that feels fast paced for you because, you're on your way to this practice and that practice. And, schoolwork and, then you also have to take care of yourself. And then there's laundry and dishes and, like whatever else that somebody else needs from you.
Right. Yeah.
And so all of these things I think create, a lot of noise, a lot of congestion in our minds. And, kind of what I hear you saying is like, pay attention to slow down,
Yeah.
like pay attention to the color of the leaves right now in the fall.
They're
Like
so
when
pretty.
they're so pretty, right? I'm looking at out my window actually right now. I was like, yeah. And when we slow down and like this is one of the things honestly, having these conversations on here, for obviously I love to like, talk to everybody on here listening and, give them something to take home, but also it's like I get to have these really awesome conversations with people that I wouldn't have had a conversation with. And guess what? When you're on a microphone and you have headphones in your ear, you can only be present right here, right now.
Yeah.
And, there is something to be said about slowing down and just like really truly listening to the people around you with like intention instead of thinking about 100 other things that are on your mind. There's something to be said about going on a walk in nature and just like slowing down and looking at the leaves that are
Yeah.
changing in the fall, like, and I think by doing those things, like you are going to hear your intuition a lot louder. I think it's so hard to listen to that internal voice that we all have and are born with, because it's noisy now. Like, and I think the world just gets noisier and noisier. And like, I think like us as nurses, like, we have learned to like quiet the noise because we have to focus in a really chaotic and noisy environment in order to literally save someone's life. And so I think that's like also why, maybe we tend to be more, intuitive
Mhm.
and, that you can come on here and share. I think that's beautiful. It's not just for nurses, but like,
Yeah.
and I love that you're teaching new nurses because like we were talking before we came on the show, like I was like, when I see new nurses, I'm always like, hey, you have to protect your light because the darkness that we are around all the time, like working in the ER, it will put your light out if you don't protect it, and we were kind of talking about that. And I think it goes along with intuition. Like if you don't keep that light on and you know your intuition would probably also be dimmed in that environment because you're going to be listening to the noise and not what's really inside of you.
Yeah. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
The noise blindness to the alarms unless they're the really, really
Uh-huh.
bad alarm, you know,
Yeah.
listening listening to people talk at you and yell at you. I know that a lot of nurses,
Yes.
especially on nights, will put in like an ear pod, just, obviously trying to keep themselves awake and maybe they're listening to like really decent, pods on medicine and stuff. But at the same time, like, sometimes somebody falls and it's just that little thud, and you're just like, "Wait, what was that?"
Mhm.
You're like, "Did anybody else hear
Mhm.
that?" And you're just like, "Do, do, do." So you get up and you go and you check it out. So it's being able to pay attention to even just the little things too, where it's, "Oh, did somebody fall?" Or somebody like, is there an IV pump going off somewhere? Like, what's happening? And it's super faint sounds, but you learn to pick them up. It's the same thing with intuition. It can be so very faint in the beginning, but the more you kind of lean into it and then you get validated, right? So you've got a patient
Mhm.
that you don't think is doing too well. You finally trust yourself enough that you go to the doc and say, "Hey, I'm just not sure about XYZ. Can you just come in and take a look at them?" If you've got a great doc, they're going to stop what they're doing and come see. And
Mhm.
even as a new nurse, if you're just learning and you do that, and there's nothing wrong with the patient or the patient's not as sick as maybe you thought they were, just having that doc come in and see them, the science says they still improve outcomes because the doctor's taken
Mhm.
another look at them. So don't stress about being wrong because we're all wrong. We've all been wrong. We've had those moments where we overreact a little bit because maybe we're a little tired, we're a little hungry, or a little burnt out, or the situation is a little hitting a little bit too close to home and it's kind of breaking
Right.
our armor just a little bit. But it's
Mhm.
okay to be wrong because you're still improving patient
Yeah.
outcomes.
Yeah. I love that so much. Writing and then also working night shift, I'm kind of amazed. Can I just tell you that, Jen? I'm like, what? Tell me about how you did both, because I think that, like, writing, I mean, I have an outline for a book as well, and it's a major undertaking in itself.
Yeah.
And then alongside nursing as well, like, how did you stay motivated to complete your book, especially on, like, tough days when you're exhausted and all that good stuff?
Yeah. It's hard, right? At the time, it came out of me in 6 weeks, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, that's so
Mhm.
fast." I said, "Well, but that was, like, 14 years worth of stories, right?" So,
Yeah.
it took 14 years to get to that point. So just, everything will come out in time. You have to realize that if you're not feeling it, don't do it. You have to give yourself a lot of love and ease when it comes to the days that are really tough and you're just not feeling it. You're allowed to step away. You're allowed to do your own process. And for me, a lot of it was going back and forth. So I'd quickly outline a story because, those were the stories that we've already got drilled down pat. We've shared them 100 times. It's a little 2 minute,
Mhm.
anecdotal story. But then to come back and flesh it out into an actual scene and an actual story to where people can who weren't there can absolutely put themselves in your shoes and be there with you. It took time, and you better believe, especially the really tough stories, it took several times of going back and adding a little bit more detail, then getting overwhelmed and walking away, coming back to it a few days
Mhm.
later, putting in a little bit more detail, getting overwhelmed, walking away. It's a process. You know, it's not a one and done, it's a continual back and forth, and some of us, like, I personally function, A to B, and I go A to B, and I always go A to B, and if there's a C, then I will add C, but after B. Like, I
Mhm.
personally can't jump around, and writing a story where I knew, so I'm working on a fiction, murder mystery in a hospital,
Mhm.
and, I knew what my outcome wanted to be, and I'm having such a hard time getting to that final outcome, and so being able to hire help and people who can read what you've got and maybe help you a little bit with the outline or help you with the thought process, that's fine. That's how people operate. You're not
Mhm.
expected to be everything to everybody. And especially when writing, there are many different kinds of editors. There's line editors, there's developmental editors, there's content editors, there's all sorts because everybody needs help in certain spots. I'm an ER nurse. That's where I excel. If you threw me into the OR, I would flounder and probably cry because that is absolutely not my jam. That's for the absolute, OCD type A personalities that everything needs to be done in order, which sounds funny enough listening back. But I like chaos. I like a little bit of wiggle room when I'm working. Apparently, when I'm writing, I like A to B. so
Mhm.
so know that
Mhm.
there's lots
Yeah.
of learning processes, there's lots of ways to do it. There's it and a lot of people, it takes a lot of time to get from where you wanna go to where you are. So be gentle and kind to yourself and know that writing is not easy. This is why not everybody does it. And being able to reach out for help is key because we're not able to do everything all the time, and knowing that that's not
Yeah.
a downfall, that's just I'm the writer. I'm not the editor because I suck at editing. But thank
Mhm.
God that I have an editor who I trust and they, are taking my voice and are making my novel better for it. And it's
Yeah.
just that's part of the process. It's just one of these
Yeah.
things where everything has its time, everything in a certain order to a degree, but, there's so much wiggle room for how you write, where you write. Maybe you're not a writer, maybe you're the editor, which is great, because we need editors. We need the people to design the covers. We need the people to do the PR and the marketing because that's definitely not my strong suit. So
Me either.
being comfortable, like, kind of, respecting what your time is worth. So I know what my dollar value is per hour. If I was to learn how to try and make a cover, that would probably be easily 20 hours to make a half decent cover versus paying somebody 2 hours of my time to do a great cover.
Yeah.
That's me getting my
Yeah,
time
totally.
back. That's unless I'm curious and wanna learn, sure, go at it, but I'm busy doing other things. So I'm realizing
Mhm.
what my time is worth, and I'm lucky
Totally.
enough to be able to pay somebody to do that. Here you go.
Yeah, love it. Well, okay, I wanna go into, like, for those feeling like maybe they're at their breaking point in life or they're going through a really hard time, whether that's in work or just in life in general. What would you tell them about reconnecting with their intuition to find more stability and strength?
Yeah. You have to trust yourself. And I know that you've probably put yourself into positions where somebody has taken your power away from you or made you doubt that you know
Mhm.
what you're doing. You
Mhm.
know, it will take time to get to a place where you start to trust yourself again and realize that you do know what you're doing and you do know yourself. For me, a lot of getting back to a place where I knew who I was during places of bullying was music. I would go back and I would listen to my like 90s mashup music that I used to listen to in like grade 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, because that's who I was. And you were a kid and you didn't know what was happening and you weren't yet tainted by people's expectations and your own expectations. So going back to that, I found it was super cathartic getting lost in that music. And then that music seemed to kind of unlock something in me where I could then feel like I was in my own skin again. I could, start to feel my own heartbeat and I could start to figure out what was going on. Um so that was one part. Another part was sleep. Absolutely. Sleep is so
Mhm.
so key.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
usually when we're busy and we're trying to make ends meet and do all the things and overextending ourselves, sleep is the very first thing to get cut. When in reality, it really we need to be putting more emphasis on sleep for ourselves and not just quick naps. If that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do, but trying to prioritize really decent sleep. And if you have to take either medications or supplements like magnesium to help you sleep, that's fine. That's cool. Sometimes you're just at such a low tank where you've got no energy
Mhm.
for anything. Being able to just take, a little bit of melatonin or a supplement with magnesium, or if prescribed, a sleeping aid if that's what you need. There's no harm in asking for help. It's the same thing as writing a
Yeah.
book. Sometimes you do have to ask for help in order to get to the place where you need to go. And
Yeah.
being burnt out and no energy, you feel like you're already burdened. So why I don't want to burden anybody else, especially as healthcare. I don't want anybody taking care of me because I'm supposed to be the one taking care of others. But in reality,
Yeah.
man, like, I would love for somebody to sit me down and be like, "Okay, I realize you really haven't been eating. Here's a half decent meal. It's nice and hot. Here's a cup of coffee. I would like you to take a nap later, or I would like you to go to bed early and I'll take care of the kids." Do something like that. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a spouse. Sometimes it's just a really good friend or a parent or a sibling. Just that's again the whole idea of a tribe. That's why we need them, because sometimes it's
Mhm.
somebody else pointing out that you're really not functioning. For you to
Yeah.
finally accept that, okay, I do need help. I There needs to be more to this than just scraping by minute to minute and not having enough energy for anything, let alone myself. And then the guilt sets in, and that's a whole other spiral. But, it took burning out and depression and COVID and all of this to finally reach out for antidepressant medications, things that I probably should have been
Mhm.
on long ago. But, oh,
Mhm.
I'm tough. I can mentally tough this out. I don't need
Mhm.
anybody else. I can power through. Man, when I tell you, when the antidepressants finally started kicking in, and granted, sometimes it can take up to 6 weeks for an antidepressant to kick in, so just know that going in. Um, when I finally started laughing again and goofing around and feeling like myself, and the laughter brought energy, which brought joy, which brought, me feeling better, and was finally to a point where then, okay, I can sleep and I can enjoy, and my kids are noticing and my husband's noticing and my colleagues are noticing that I'm finally coming out of my shell, where very obviously I'm not a quiet person and I was quiet, and that's not good for me personally. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
um
Yeah, I think a lot of too is like once we get to the point where we can understand how we actually feel, a lot of people stop there, right? Like they think that all they need to do is understand themselves, like on how they're feeling. But there's another step that like a lot of people miss is like, what do I actually need in this environment
yeah.
or in this situation? And then the next step is like, how do I verbalize that? How do I get, what I need based on how I feel in this environment? And so, yeah, I agree. Um, I'm just going to read because I keep this handy, which is so funny because when I got the email, to have you on the show and that we were going to be talking about intuition, I was like, oh, I love this topic. And this is one of my favorite quotes. And so I was just wanting to share it because it totally pertains to everything we're talking about here.
Yes.
And it's an Albert Einstein quote. So you may have probably heard it. And it says, the mind can proceed only so far upon what it knows and can prove. There comes a point where the mind takes a leap, call it intuition or what you will, and comes upon a higher plane of knowledge, but can never prove how it got there. All great discoveries have involved such a leap. Indeed, it is not intellect, but intuition, which advances humanity.
Oh, I have
And
not heard that one.
it's one of my, I keep it close to me. It's
Oh,
one of my favorite quotes because I'm like, it's Albert Einstein
yes.
who said that.
And for him to
It's
be
so good.
so intellectual and so logical and so
Yes.
mathematical and to come at it like
And
that is absolutely hilarious.
powerful.
Oh, can't
Yeah.
even.
So I want to know, like, is there anything else that you want to leave us with on intuition? And then also, like, obviously, how can we connect with you from here and go grab your book?
Yeah. So intuition is just like any other skill. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes, time to hone it. It's like anything
Mm-hmm.
else. It's learning a new language all over again, and being able to trust yourself is key. So I dare you to try that the next time you notice a nudge to follow it. And if nothing else, just realizing that it's there and just giving it 2 seconds of your time to say that, yes, this is happening. You may not need to do anything about it, but just acknowledging that it's happening is at least 50% of the work. So I just dare
Okay.
you. Um,
That's a good one.
and I mean,
No, seriously, like, and I'll tell you what, like, being intuitive, like, this could be some big things in your life, but it can also be like saving you a traffic ticket. I'm
yes,
just gonna throw that
yeah,
out
just
there.
like,
Like,
oh,
I'm
I'm
not
just gonna
like
slow down a
I'll
little bit.
speed a lot, but like if I go a little over the speed limit on the freeway, I swear 9 times out of 10, if I feel like the police officer is gonna be like at the next, overpass, he's there.
Yep,
So listen to it.
listen to it. I just dare you. Like, what could hurt?
Yeah.
What could hurt? What could
It's
harm?
so true.
Just try it out is all I'm saying. And then just giving yourself
Yeah.
grace to know if you're tired
Mhm.
and you need to take a nap, do that. If you're
Mhm.
hungry, go get a
Mhm.
snack. A lot of what we do as nurses in a daily basis and mothers is we're running around listening to everybody else's needs, but we never listen to our own. So giving yourself the
Mhm.
time and grace to listen to your own, again, gut instincts about, do I need to pee? Do I need to have a
Yeah.
snack? Do I need to go lay down for a little bit? Just try it out. And so, yeah, if you want to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn at Jennifer Johnson, BSCNRN. I know you're rolling your eyes, but it's, swear to God, it's only because there's so many Jennifer Johnsons. I should have kept my maiden name. So that's the reason for the
Wait, I would
BSCNRN.
Um, I actually don't roll it at all. I'm like, I actually love that. I very much like, I'm like, I am proud of that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
I enjoy
Yeah.
it. It's just
You as you should.
some
As
people
you
kind of
should.
like roll their eyes and are like, "Oh
No
God,"
way.
they're using the alphabet behind your
No.
name. Like, you worked hard for the alphabet. You
Yeah.
can find me.
We'll keep going. We can keep putting
We can
letters
listen.
on there, you know?
I was a
Yeah.
CEN, ANCC,
Yeah.
kind of the whole,
Yep.
bit. Is
Yeah.
what it is.
We're
Uh,
talking acronyms now.
all the acronyms. You can
These
find
are all of
me
our certifications in nursing. We
all
can have there's a
ANCC,
lot of them.
ACLS. Like, why not just
Yes.
like throw out
Yeah.
all the letters?
I know. Yeah,
You can
it's a lot of hard work to do what we
Right?
do.
And they don't pay us.
Mhm.
They don't pay us to do it. But
Yeah,
they want it. You can find me at RX for Growth, so prescriptionforgrowth.com. On TikTok
love
and
that.
Instagram, I'm at ernurse.jen with 2 N's, JENN. And yeah, you can probably find me creep around on Facebook somewhere. It's less so, but if you
Yep.
need someone to vent to, nursing or otherwise, feel free to reach out. We're all here for each other, mothers, women,
Mhm.
friends, we got to support each other. So whatever you need, hit me up and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, and your book is coming out in November.
Mhm.
And it's specifically for like newer nurses.
It is, but again, like some of the us older nurses, we know intuition, but
Mhm.
we've never talked about it. So let's start talking
Yeah,
about it. Let's start bringing it out of that 3 a.m. conversation.
love
And
it.
now that the science is behind it, let's start teaching it.
100%. I'm
Yeah.
here for it. Well, go grab her book on Amazon. And just thank you so much for coming on here, sharing your insights, the power of intuition. I love it. I'm here for it. I can't wait to read your book. It's gonna be great.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute joy.
Right? So much fun. I already knew it was going to be. I'm like, oh, we have so much in common. Like, just book her whenever you want.
We're the same person. It's fine.
Right? Well, this has been awesome. To all our listeners, I hope you found inspiration in today's conversation. Remember, whether you're in a high stress job or simply navigating the ups and downs of life, trusting your gut or your intuition can be a powerful tool for maintaining your well being and making choices that align with who you truly are. Don't forget to check out Jen's upcoming book, Nursing Intuition, for more of her wisdom and practical guidance. Until next time, stay connected to yourself and keep living your life without secrets. Hey there, it's Jillian from Life Without Secrets. Ever feel like you and your partner aren't quite on the same page? Well, you're not alone, and that's exactly why I created our latest issue of Truthful magazine. It's packed with insights and stories about bridging that gap and finding a deeper connection. We're diving into real conversations about needs, feelings, and how honest dialogue can rekindle that closeness that you've been missing. Why not explore this together? Go grab your free copy right now at lifewithoutsecrets.com and turn those pages into shared moments. Can't wait for you to dive in and share your thoughts with me.